Welcome to Autism ADHD TV. It is the place to be for parents and professionals. I'm your host, Holly Blanc Moses, the mom psychologist who gets it. We dive into all kinds of important information like behavior, social skills, and learning. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Brian King.
Thank you, Holly.
I'm so happy that you're here with me today. I'm going to introduce you really quick. Everyone, I know a lot of you know Brian already, but for those who don't, he has a master's degree in social work, is the father of 3 boys with Asperger's and ADHD. After receiving the same diagnoses himself, he went on to write 5 books and become recognized specialist in the field with a unique approach to helping parents connect with their children who live with these unique challenges. Brian's presentations and programs continue to change the lives all around the world. His message of self-compassion, resilience, and the importance of working together is one we all need to hear. Totally agree. Today, we're going to talk about expectations. This is a big one.
Very
but big. Yeah, let's do it. Let's dive in.
Expectations, because you and I kicked this one around for quite a bit. And in the era of COVID, one of the challenges schools and parents have had is how do we take the expectations that we had pre-pandemic and repackage them for, in many cases, what's still a remote learning environment or a hybrid, part in person, part at home, or in person with social distancing and masks and this ever-present fear of this virus that's killing people, including their peers. And we're supposed to keep our minds focused on learning. All while this is the undercurrent or backstory. And we want our kids to be focused on academic learning and all of the other stuff of life while all this is happening in the background. So I don't know about you, Holly, but how's that working for you?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a hot mess because not only are we mixing these expectations that we have naturally and balancing that with our own experiences and what's the expectation that's right for my child and considering their needs, all of these things, plus you throw in something that's never happened before in our lifetime. It is really tough right now.
One challenge I have, and we talked about this a little bit, is when you have parents that are, and this is part of their own defense mechanism, are kind of carving out the aspects of their kids' experiences that they can't relate to. So they're saying things like, well, when I was a kid, I studied by doing this, or I studied by doing that. And they're conveniently forgetting the part about, yeah, but I'm worried about the kid who refuses to wear a mask in class. You're telling me, well, I just need to sit down and clear my mind, just put some music in the background, and that'll help me be calm enough to study. Yeah, but I just can't get out of my head the fact that, kid one classroom over was diagnosed with COVID. And I think he might have sat next to me in the cafeteria. I'm not sure, but I'm kind of preoccupied with that. And I can't seem to get that out of my head and focus on my studies. You got anything for that, Dad? No, I'm sorry, I don't have any suggestions. But just try what I suggested to you. So parents only have advice that goes as far as their own experience. And a lot of parents don't acknowledge the fact that they don't know.
I think that's true. And it's such a human thing that we do, comparing our own experience and what is happening for our child or what we think should be happening with our child.
And what do you think the should is?
The should, which is such a big word, it's really not. It feels icky, but it also feels easy to pop in. When I think about my academic history and I think about my child's current experience, it's like apples and oranges. Yeah,
easily.
yeah, easily. And we think about how this comes up so naturally for us. So often I will go straight to the humanness, like a lot of us do. And then I have to think about, wait a minute, that's not their experience. I can't compare this. My expectation for myself and my experience is not going to be the same as theirs. And I'll give you an example. As soon as it, like, just as yesterday, this happened. Our youngest son really did pretty poorly on his spelling test. There were some challenges with when was the test, what words were on the test. The list is in his locker. He just started with a locker this year. That doesn't help us at home. And so we were trying to figure that out. He was disappointed in the grade that he received. I talked with the teacher who said they would give him another chance to rewrite the words that he got wrong 5 times. Well, he has a written expression disorder and fine motor skill differences. And so then
Well,
we're
that could explain why he got it wrong the first time.
right. And we've been working through this, but this is a new school year, new teacher. And she was amazing. We emailed back and forth several times until about 10 o'clock last night, talking about how can we make this work for him. So when I think about me, his age, no problem with spelling. I was in the spelling bee. I screwed up the word vacuum and didn't make it onto the finals. That was my problem. His is, I can't remember to bring this list home because my brain is busy, my brain is different, and it's really tough to be organized. I also can't remember the words that we even went over today. I have trouble writing, and that's how we're graded, is on what we write. So ultimately, he'll go back over the ones he got wrong today, and she will test him orally.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's like making somebody who stutters give an oral presentation.
Right.
It makes absolutely no sense.
And that happens all the time.
It's the expectation that normal is the goal. Let's everybody head towards this baseline of average. You're like the kid that wants to work ahead. No, 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 no. You can't work ahead. You need to pull yourself back and stay where everybody else is. Doesn't matter if you're faster, slow down. We don't want the slower kids to feel bad about themselves. You must remain average. Stay with everyone else.
And someone who is struggling needs to try harder to meet that average.
Right? You got to catch up, be average like everyone else, and do it the way everyone else is doing it so you can fit in.
That's right.
All those expectations that actively discriminate and discourage diversity while they give lip service to the importance of difference. We accept everyone for just who they are. No, you don't. You talk about it, you don't practice it. We call that hypocrisy.
And it's being talked about, and I find that to be true. You know, we are really talking a lot about neurodiversity, what other people need, but it seems like it's not meeting up with the action part.
Can you say more about that?
Sure, it feels good. It feels good to talk about people being unique. It feels good to, I think, neurotypical people. Me being one of them, I like talking about that topic. I think it's important. I think educating neurotypical people about other people's, their different ways of thinking or their different ways of behaving is important. But what does that mean? How do we take action into making it matter in real life? I do see a disconnect there.
Is that something that you think actively shows up in your own life?
I think so sometimes. There is, and I think it's about being our authentic selves And that's why I love this podcast, because that is very true. And I know you are very much your authentic self as well. I mentioned or admitted my humanness early on in this conversation. And things that come up for me are statements that I may have heard growing up myself. And I think we don't pay enough attention to that. Is so and so got an A in that class. Why didn't you? Why didn't you win this or do this? You're not supposed to do it that way. That's wrong. That's a weird shirt. You can't wear that.
Wow, that takes me back. I'm reliving so much of my childhood.
You're reliving it right now.
Yeah, criticism. Correct, complain. If it's not from a parent, it's from a teacher.
Yes, definitely. It was frowned upon when I wore my lavender breakdancing outfit every single Monday in the 3rd grade.
You got a picture of that?
You know, I don't think so, but I wish I did.
I had the jumpsuit with all the zippers. And
oh, yes.
I did the break dancing and all that stuff.
Yep, I took a break dancing class.
Because again, you know, there were all those different trends. And as much as they said, be yourself, be authentic, but at the same time, they say, don't do that, that's weird. Or don't draw attention to yourself. Or don't say that, you might offend someone. So what is the truth? What do they honestly want for you?
That's true, and that's really confusing. And so I think we need to take an honest look at ourselves almost before we say anything. Like, why is this coming up for us? My oldest son, who's autistic and has severe ADHD, he's almost 17. And he has this blinged out giant Pokemon necklace. And it is something. It's something.
My 23-year-old has Pokemon tattoos.
Nice.
Yeah.
When I first saw this necklace, and it was, it just reminds me of one of those bedazzled 80s garments. So he loved it. And the first thing that popped in my head was, people are gonna make fun of him. He is gonna cause attention to himself. And part of that was, I wasn't embarrassed of that. Nothing embarrasses me. Is I want to protect him from everything. I know I can't, but as his parent, I just want to shield him from any more possible rejection than he has to deal with already. But again, that doesn't go with my value of being your unique self. I can't tell him, you can't wear that. People are going to laugh at you. This is important to him. He wants to wear this. And I don't want to stop him. I don't want to be that person that is supposed to be his person, his support person, and then turn around and say, you can't do that. You can't be different.
Yeah, ultimately, because I've, like you, have been reflecting upon this contradiction, is why do we claim to be champions of diversity and equality and acceptance, but still throw these messages? And the answer is basically fear. As much as we want to be seen and acknowledged and valued for our unique contribution, we also need to belong. It's part of how we are hardwired psychologically. And if we are different to the point where people consider us to be a threat to them, they'll put us on the outside, and we experience that. Now, the worst case scenario is rejection, when they completely push you to the periphery. Nah, you can't sit with us. You can't play with us. You're too weird. And that to us feels life-threatening, and we don't want that. So we're constantly riding that fence between how much of who I truly am can I put out there? And how much do I need to fit in or go along so that I still belong? And that can be tricky to break, because in our culture, where, especially with the English language, which is problematically black and white, it's either right or wrong, good or bad. So we try and put things in those categories. But when we're talking about being your authentic self, it's not always as clean. But you read the memes, right? And they always say, be yourself, like it's an all or nothing proposition, right? Can you really do that? If you're somebody that likes leathers, are you going to go to church on Sunday, in your gear and say, hey, Father, I'm being authentic today? Is that really going to go over well? I don't think so. I was raised Catholic. I promise you that would not go over well on Sunday. So there are certain times where you might just say, you know what? I'm going to pull her back today, because I understand the people I'm going to be around are not at where I'm at. And I need to appreciate that they have different levels of acceptance or awareness around authenticity. They're still caught up in their shoulds. They have different expectations. I need to meet them where they're at, as opposed to thrusting my authenticity upon them. So in terms of what you expect of yourself, you have to take others into consideration as well. And neurodiverse people can have some difficulty with that. And a lot of lessons and perspective taking. Yeah, it's confusing. So one thing for parents to do is get clear on what are your ultimate priorities for your kids, and then communicate that. In the case of my kids, their mental health comes first. And if anything having to do with academia threatens that, then I could care less what the academic expectation is. And I've communicated that to teachers over the years. And I think one of the things that came up in our conversation is, I have yet to see anything come home from school in the form of an assignment, a project, or anything that is so paradigm shifting for my kids that if they don't get an A on it, their life is over. All of it has seemed so disposable, like it's all busy, not a whole lot of complex problem solving or anything that's going to inspire them or cause an epiphany. No, it's like it's all garbage, stuff that they could figure out from YouTube. Sometimes I wonder why the heck I'm sending them to school in the first place. But if it's the difference between doing that and spending some time decompressing or meditating or taking a walk around the block, going to the park, or doing something just to center themselves and be grounded, and decompressing some of that tendency to rush or feel the weight of this more that the school is giving them. If I could free them of that so that they can feel like they no longer have to chase good enough today and can just be for a while, I'm going to prioritize that.
It's interesting that you say that. I 100% agree with you. Now, prior to having my differently wired kids, I had this idea of the shoulds. I think we all have an idea of what things maybe will look like in the future. We kind of have an idea. Everyone does.
Well, we have the ideals of what we want. Shoulds tend to be very idealistic.
They do. And I was thinking about what you said, and I agree. I absolutely prioritize mental health. Yes, my kids are in school. Yes, I pull them out for therapy, period. It's not convenient, but I prioritize their mental health. Mm-hmm. On the way to school this morning, I was taking my youngest. We were talking about his feelings about losing our cat, which was really tough for him. And this day that he stayed home because it was all too much. It wasn't just the cat. It was a lot of different things that were happening for him that were really piling on. And he needed to stay home from school that day because his mental health was more important than anything that day, period. We talked about it on the way to school this morning, and he talked about that day that he stayed home. And I was talking about how important mental health was. And he goes, Mom, I think that it was piling on. There were too many things happening. It was too stressful. And I got so angry and I couldn't stop myself. And I think it was just a lot of things together. And like, you know what you just said about yourself and learned about yourself was the biggest thing you can learn all day today.
And that's something that is going to carry him forward throughout life,
Right.
as opposed to whatever was going to be on the pop quiz that is going to be dumped the second that test is over.
Right. And I think that standing back, whether you're a parent, an educator, a therapist, all the above, standing back and looking at the whole picture, I think is really how we serve people the best, and not in these silos that we tend to do. And again, I think that's a human thing to categorize. But as looking at the whole person definitely can make all the difference.
Looking at the whole person and looking at the context the person is in,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just the context in which you deal with that person. Because one of the challenges in school is that if you, like the school social worker, for instance, the school social worker's job is to maximize the functioning of the student in relationship to the school environment. If you try and talk about stuff happening at home or whatever, the school social worker can't even touch it because it really doesn't relate to their functioning in school. It's all about how do we help them engage the curriculum so that they get along with teachers and get along with peers so that they have good grades. Beyond that, it's really not on the school social worker's radar. Myself being out here in the world, not being confined to one context, I can look at everything. Who they hang out with, their family members, their community. Are they connected with any agencies in the community, their church, any kind of a community center? I can go as big as I want to. And then I see all the different influences and how they matter. And that the fact that this child's life is an organism. All of these different connections that have influence, as opposed to, okay, you're in this little bubble called school and it's all your decisions, young man, that are making what's happening happen. It's because you chose this. Really? Because I entered a school building, I suddenly entered a vacuum where nothing else has any influence over my experience other than my choices? Give me a break. I live in this world where there are about 99.9% of the things that influence me are out of my control, and you're telling me that my choices are what's causing all of this? Please.
You should have made better choices.
That'll fix everything.
It's interesting, and the school for my kids, they do a really good job. And for my oldest, he recently lost they're both adopted, recently lost his biological mother. And that's a big deal, obviously, even though he may not remember her. That's a big feeling, lots of big feelings. And there was a concern that he was leaving class to go talk to the school counselor about his feelings about this topic, and that he was missing class. And I said, I don't care.
Yeah.
If he needs to access someone for support and is showing that and is communicating his need in that moment, that's amazing. That's amazing. Most adults don't do that. We're supposed to have it all together and be fine and act like we're fine, pretend, mask, all the things.
Yeah, there's this strange belief in the school system that a present body is an attentive one. That if there's a butt in the seat, that the kid's paying attention. Now, you can't have your child out of the classroom, they're missing instruction time. So I promise you, if that kid is in the seat and they're grieving or they're stressed out or they're trying to hold it together, they're not hearing a thing you're saying. You're better off giving that kid a break. Let them go to the counselor, let them go to the OT room, let them take a walk around the halls to decompress, whatever they need to. to indulge in some self-care and regulate their nervous system, give them that. Because you're not giving them anything as long as they're stressed out. Who cares if they're in their sleep?
And I think that goes to say too, with the expectations that we have of ourselves, again, as parents and educators and therapists, that we're supposed to handle everything. You're supposed to make sure that everything is taken care of and taken care of well. But then at the same time, there's this disconnect, and we see this tons of social media images everywhere you look about the importance of self-care. And I always kind of laugh a little bit when I see that, because again, it feels good. It's pretty. it's a great idea. But do you really embrace that in your life is important?
Do you yourself practice it without feeling guilty?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do practice it, what kind of support do you get from those around you? Did they make you feel guilty by saying, oh, must be nice to have all that free time?
That's right. Then you
right?
feel bad.
Right? Or say, well, maybe one of these days I'll have some opening in my schedule so I can do it. You know, the busyness syndrome, right? The people that are addicted to busy and burnout and all that stuff and martyrdom. And because you carve out the time to take care of yourself, you're somehow doing it wrong. And they want to make you feel bad about it.
Right. Or you're selfish.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Or you're not tough enough. And one thing I've noticed about the IEPs, for those unfamiliar with that, the Individualized Education Plan, it's something that the law makes for our kiddos to give them extra supports if they need them, so that they have a better chance of being successful academically. Well, one thing that I see is a lot of the measures of success to show that our kiddos are coping successfully is if nobody knows they're struggling. It's the cultural equivalent of don't show your weaknesses. Don't let people see a chink in your armor. So if there's any kind of ruffle that interferes with the teacher teaching, the child has failed. They're not coping well enough. So that's one of the reasons why the kids feel like they have to hold it together and why they come home and blow up on their parents. Because if they show any kind of wrinkle, if they tap their foot, if they fidget, they tap their pencil, that is self-care, but it is seen as disruptive. It's seen as not achieving a goal. They are dinged for it. They're made to feel bad about it. And all of that is they're accumulating guilt and shame and embarrassment and self-consciousness. And this is all stuff that their nervous system is saying, do this, you'll feel better. It's all being discouraged because expectation-wise, it's not normal enough. And it's interfering with the teacher's needs. The teacher has a right to be heard, child doesn't. Teacher has a right to have their need met, child doesn't. All these needs, all these expectations are being communicated in the classroom. And the expectations or the message largely being communicated is the adults' needs matter more than yours do. And that needs to change.
Yes, and I think that also goes back to recognizing your own upbringing. I know I hear quite a bit, you know, I could never have acted that way growing up. And that goes back to expectations too. Mm-hmm. And well, but did you need to? Did you need to communicate what was happening for you? Were you hurting? Were you not getting the support you need? And when you break it down, it's really sad. Because a lot of us adults didn't have that opportunity to be ourselves, to be able to say, this is hard for me, or to say, I need someone right now.
And if you look beyond how your child did it, you know, you're focusing so much on the method they used. And, you know, again, our society is so focused on behavior. How dare you talk to me like that? How dare you raise your voice at me? And we're punishing the behavior, and we're completely missing the need that's behind it. But we don't ask ourselves, what does my child need right now? What are they trying to tell me? That with their young brain and their young emotions, they don't yet have the knowledge or skills to communicate effectively to me. What's behind this? So that when your child starts cursing like a sailor at 5 years old, you don't say, oh, bar of soap, where is it when you need it? That's old school. You have to ask yourself, holy cow, what unmet need does my child have that this is the way they're going about trying to communicate it to me? I've got to find out what the need is and try and help my child find a much more constructive way to communicate it so they can get their needs met, instead of this shocking response that's either going to get them detention, punished, ignored, whatever, but it's not going to get them what they want. So my principle for this is focus on the message, not the method.
I think that's important. And when we talk about that unmet need, not only as parents that you and I can speak to, not only as educators, not only as therapists, but that child's needs matter whether they're a child or not. Okay, they're still people and they still experience so many things, and especially kids that are differently wired. They're stuck in this world that's just not built for them, and we expect them to not be them.
And one of the gifts those children present to this world is that trying to make a world work in a linear fashion does not move it forward. It causes more suffering, because the more we try and force the world to fly in one direction, the more people suffer. But when you allow people to be creative and express themselves, the kind of colors and diversity that come out of it are amazing. I was just listening to my playlist the other day. I have like my favorites all kind of put together on my phone. And when I saw the different genres, how you go from like 90s R&B to Frank Sinatra, and you hear the contrast, you're like, these people on the same planet? Because there's so much difference, but they're both human beings. Different life experiences, different skin colors, cultures, geography, same planet. But so many different influences, and look what they did with it. Imagine if they were raised side by side and the people around them were saying, okay, try and be as much alike as possible. Make sure you fit in. How much would have been lost if diversity was not encouraged, if they were not in different environments where they were told to just think differently, explore what interests you, follow your strengths as opposed to trying to be like everybody else. So this diversity is really where the win is. We need to encourage anybody, especially our kids, do what interests you. And if somebody will pay you to do it, you have got a potential career path, whether or not you were ever graded for this thing, or given a certificate for it, or earned a diploma in it. If you can monetize it, this can become a contribution that you make to humanity.
I love that. And, expectation it's one word full of all kinds of messages, all kinds of feelings, all kinds of experiences. And what I want to wrap up it with, Brian, and of course we could talk about this for another hour easy, so you're going to have to come back on and chat with me again, is that when we're looking at an unmet need from our children, our students, our clients, let's keep that in mind. When we're looking at ourselves, what are our unmet needs? And that might be a little uncomfortable or a little too close to some of the people that are listening and watching right now. But I think the more we can recognize our own unmet needs and communicate those, the more we can be models for our children to show them that that's okay.
Absolutely. One of the best ways to demonstrate to anybody that it is safe to take a certain risk is to go first. Let them see that we went through it and we came out the other side and we're still okay. Then we extend a hand and say, join me. As opposed to standing behind them and pushing and saying, go ahead, right off this cliff, you'll be fine. And they have no point of reference in front of them to know that they'll be okay.
And I think, again, that's important to just be vulnerable, as painful and uncomfortable as that can be sometimes. You know, we want them to tell us what's happening for them. But we also, in some ways, contributing to that masking.
They need to hear us talk about our fears, our insecurities, but they also need to hear how we work through and manage those things. Like if we're anxious about something and it turns out it was okay in the end, we need to verbalize that so that they don't just hear worry from us. They hear that that worry was resolved. Or if there's any kind of conflict between you and your husband, or if you're having conflict with somebody at work, if that gets reconciled, let them overhear how you did it. How did you resolve it? So that they get some kind of an idea that conflicts can be resolved tactfully.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on with me today. I think this was such a great conversation, and, you know, really opening up a difficult conversation. And sometimes that's what moves us forward as well, is being vulnerable ourselves, again, as parents and teachers and therapists, and recognizing first that we're all coming from this place of being human, having our own experiences and our unique experiences, that we can't form these expectations and put them on all these other people. I also want to say, please be gentle with putting so many expectations on yourself.
A perfect summarization of our conversation.
Brian, how can our watchers and listeners find out more about you?
Well, the simplest place to begin is my website, which is briancanhelp.com. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle there is Brian Can Help. Or I have several groups on Facebook. One of them is Neurodiverse Strategies for Women. And I have one for dads and one for professionals, or just my run-of-the-mill profile on Facebook, Brian King. I'm very easy to find. And I look forward to connecting with anybody who wants to track me down.
Oh, wonderful. And so you're going to be coming on to talk to me again.
Just awaiting your invitation.
Okay, fantastic. And thanks again, Brian, and take care to everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like this episode, please share it with someone. It may just be what they need to watch today. If you're a parent, I'd love if you came on over and joined our Facebook group, Autism ADHD Group for Parents. If you're a therapist or educator, come on over to our group, Autism ADHD Group for Therapists and Educators. You're going to find those links right down there in the notes. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition, or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.